What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of what we probably won't see in X camera. Today we're talking about the A7IV, Sony's A7IV. As usual, I'm going to run it down for you guys. These aren't hard and set concrete facts. These aren't even confirmed things by Sony at all. These are rumors. These are things that I would like to see in this camera, things other people would like to see in this camera, rumors that have been unofficially published by other websites and users. So take them with a grain of salt. There's a lot of things to talk about with this camera, and so we're going to start by prefacing its little brother, the A7 III. I guess that would be its father because it came before. I don't know. Camera genealogy is very confusing. The A7 III has been released a few years ago, and it's been smashingly popular among professionals, entry-level photographers, videographers, filmmakers, and it's pretty much dominated the mirrorless camera market, and especially during 2018, before there were options that were significantly either better or that really matched the Sony A7 III, because the A7 III was ahead of its time in a way, and it had specs that were really never seen before in a camera like that, in a hybrid mirrorless camera that could do photo and video exceptionally. It was very unique, and it excited a lot of people, including not myself, because I wasn't really doing this back then, but it excited a lot of people in the community, photographers, videographers, everyone and their mom was excited about the A7 III. I have used the A7 III before. I've published content on my channel, some video that actually was filmed on the A7 III. I believe my most popular in the recent months video of me talking about the Sony A7S III. That was shot on the A7 III, and look what it did for me and my channel. No, I'm just kidding. Personally, I like the image of my EOS R better. I think it looks better, and for quite a few reasons, we'll talk about some of the things that could make the Sony A7 IV look significantly better later on in this video. But with the A7 III, they're just the things that weren't on paper that you couldn't really capture in specs, which contribute to a beautiful, crisp, clean, sharp image out of the camera, regardless of what resolution you're recording and whether it's 4K, 1080, or even 720. Some of the things that weren't listed in the Sony A7 III spec sheet really didn't translate extraordinarily well to real-world use. But with the Sony A7 IV, people are hoping to see this guy in 2020, and Sony Alpha Rumors did suggest that this camera will be released in late 2020. Now, Sony Alpha Rumors, they get a reliability score of F- because they aren't. They're wrong 114% of the time. I think they said the Sony A7S III was coming out like last year or something. And look how that unfolded. Hopefully this camera doesn't get pushed too far back because of COVID-19. I guess we'll have to see with that one. But just know that this development is certainly on the horizon and in the relative near future. We're gonna go over some of the specs, and don't worry, they're not from Sony Alpha Rumors. They're from dailycameranews.com. And these are not hard and fast specs. These are just some things that people are predicting for the Sony A7 IV to feature. And in my opinion, quite frankly, they do make sense. Like, this isn't anything like the R5 with 8K video and 30 FPS in photo mode. So these aren't incredible, crazy specs, which is a little bit interesting to see from Sony. They might have to pick up some of the slack that they've dropped in the past couple of years because they've been awfully quiet on the camera side of things. I mean, they've been doing a lot with the PS5 and other niches that Sony has influence in, but with the cameras, they've been pretty quiet. So the A7 IV is rumored to have an improved 24 megapixel Cmos full frame sensor. And if you guys remember with the A7 III, they had a 24 megapixel Cmos full frame sensor. So what does improved mean? Well, I think that it could be improved in one of three ways. The first being low light capability. It could be even better. And the Sony A7S II was revered as the low light king, and it still got really impressive low light to this day. The Sony A7 III has very impressive low light, almost rivaling the Sony A7S II. But with this Mark IV coming out, I think that the low light could be the best that we have seen yet from Sony. Another way that the sensor could be marked as improved is in the dynamic range area. So the sensor could quite simply just have more detail in the highlights and retain more information in the shadows. That is essentially dynamic range. And the third way is for them to do a combination of the two, improving on both of those aspects, which would be really good to see, because one of the biggest things that separates consumer level crappy cameras from professional cinema cameras is just the massive amounts of dynamic range that cinema cameras have. Apparently, the A7 IV is going to have improved weather sealing, which is good because this didn't happen to me, but I did hear that. I don't personally know this person, but someone was using an A7 III outside and it started raining, and the hot shoe mount on top of their camera was uncovered. All of Sony's full frame cameras come with a little hot shoe cover that you can just slide in when you're not using it, but he didn't have that on. And so a single raindrop, one raindrop, plopped right onto that hot shoe mount, and apparently it rendered his camera completely useless, just broke the thing. So he had to get a new one, and that would be good. Improved weather sealing than the A7 III would be ideal. It's not saying much if one raindrop can be a $2,000 mistake or $2,000 replacement, but it's good to know that Sony is addressing these issues because that's just unacceptable, especially in 2020. It's going to have 5.5 stops of 5-axis image stabilization, so nothing really improved here. Sony's Ibis has never been revered as being that fantastic, just quite frankly. When you're shooting handheld, you can still see a lot of shake, and of course, Ibis will never be as good as a gimbal, but when you're out wide using a wide angle lens at a wide focal length, the edges and corners start to get a little bit wobbly. And when that happens, it gets bad. It makes the viewer and the audience just feel like they're on drugs. Partly why I'm not a fan of Ibis. So my opinion is that if you use a camera like the EOS R, doesn't even have Ibis, but you use a gimbal, you're perfectly fine. And if you want to go for that handheld look, handheld feel, it's certainly much better to use a neck strap and to create more security with that in combination with an image stabilized lens than it is to use Ibis, in my opinion. It's going to have the same body as the Sony A7R IV and the Sony A9 Mark II. I've used the Sony A7R III, not the 4, but it's good to hear that they're focusing on a little bit more ergonomics and making their camera body a little more ergonomically friendly, because the A7 III did bother me in that regard, and it was pretty uncomfortable to hold. It felt kind of like a brick, and not a good brick, hard and sharp edges, and so that's something that I'm looking forward to seeing in the Mark IV version of the Sony A7 line. We'll have 693 phase detect autofocusing points, fantastic, and 425 contrast detection autofocusing points. The AF system is going to have real-time tracking, IAF and video, animal IAF, and you can certainly rely on that AF system. Resolutions are going to be the same as before, with a 6K image downsampled into 4K, 4K up to 30 FPS, and 1080p up to 120 FPS. Standard sync terminal, lock release button, new save load setting, pixel shift mode, digital audio interface, dual UHS-2 SD card slots, so that's good. It's more oriented towards pros in that regard. USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type-C, 10 FPS with AF AE tracking, 5.76 megapixel EVF, 1.44 megapixel LCD screen, vari-angle display. Sony A7 IV is expected to be announced in the late 2020. So that's quite a bit of information that we cannot count on. One thing that I'm hoping to see that hasn't been talked about much, and that usually isn't on initial spec sheets and rumors, codecs. That's something that's really important to me, and I think is a really big contributor to how sharp, clean, punchy, vivid, other synonyms for good, an image looks. And that's one reason why I just love the EOS Rs. So in the color department, I'm certainly hoping to see one of 2 or 3 changes made. And that is either S-Log 2 and 3 being optimized for an 8-bit codec, and we don't need S-Log 3, I mean, really? And also it'd be nice if you could shoot in less than 800 ISO using S-Log, and in a way it seems hypocritical, because if you're in S-Log and you have ISO 800, well, all cameras have an ISO sweet spot as to where dynamic range is optimal, and it's usually not 800 ISO. And so then you have to make your decision. Do you use the lowest base ISO that your camera has, but not shoot in log, and lose out in some dynamic range? Or do you shoot in S-Log and get that flat color profile, retaining the shadows and highlights pretty well, but you are at ISO 800, so you still aren't reaping the most dynamic range? I don't know. That never made sense to me, and maybe you guys can explain it to me in the comment section. That would be great. So making that change for S-Log and optimizing the 8-bit XAVC codec, because currently there's nothing really there to work with, and you have to really push and pull the footage to make it look even presentable to a client, but then by that point, it looks like the sky is wearing a striped t-shirt. I think Sony should broaden out from the XAVC HDPPLXYZ codec and opt for an H.265 codec to provide 10-bit internal recording capability. And that's going to make it so they don't have to reorient S-Log around 8-bit. They can keep kind of S-Log as it is, but just give the camera the capability to have 10-bit colors so that you can do more with it. And if not that, well then please at least have the option to output to an HDMI recorder like the Atomos 5 and have 10-bit there. So 10-bit color, very important. And if you can't do that, make S-Log more optimized for 8-bit like Canon has done for the EOS R and that C-Log. But even then, Canon allows you to output to HDMI. And Sony has been making some very good headway in the color department, especially with the Sony Venice camera, especially with the Sony Venice line and the FX9 color, gamma, whatever, all of it is looking significantly better than some of the previous models that we've seen. From the A7S II and even the A7 III, there are some issues there that I don't necessarily like. So I think some improvements can be expected when the A7 IV comes out as far as color goes. Because hopefully Sony can trickle down some of that good stuff they've been doing with the FX9 and those premium cameras, trickle it down into the more lower end professional line cameras that like the A7 IV. And of course, the big reason for why Sony isn't implementing these massive changes, kind of like Canon is with the R5, is because one, they want to keep it priced around the same range as the A7 III, but then of course they'll drop the A7 III price upon the A7 IV release. But they also want to keep the A7 III customer and consumer base alive. They want to still have demand for that camera, give people a reason to buy that camera so they can have the best of both worlds. My last thing that I really am hoping to see in this camera is better options for high bitrate codecs. That has just been an issue with the A7 III and partly why I just decided to stop using it. At 4K, the maximum bitrate you could get was 100 megabits per second, and that's not very ideal, especially in comparison to what we're shooting on right now. This is 1080p, not 4K, but we're recording it in 180 megabits per second. So that's 80 megabits more than what the Sony can give you in 4K. And that just blows my mind. I think Sony really has to wake up to the high bitrate codec world and providing 1080 and maybe just taking the 100 megabits per second from the 4K and bringing it down to 1080p. That would be fine. And then in 4K, having 400 megabits or 420, 480. A lot of companies like to have weird numbers like that, but somewhere around there with an option to have just a higher megabit count. It would just make using the footage in post, playing with it, cutting, tweaking, everything that goes into just creating a stunning image and creating beautiful art. And at the end of the day, image is really what matters most, and that's why I've opted for the EOS R, not for Sony. And so hopefully they can really give customers a reason, not me, because I'm fine with Canon, but give customers a reason to really dive into their ecosystem of lenses, of camera bodies, and I think that the A7 IV has the potential to do just that. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found any of this information to be useful, give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, and comment in the section below what you think that this camera could bring, what you're expecting, what you're hoping for and wishing for, or if you know something that maybe I don't, which isn't very hard to do because I'm a 20-year-old college student who just Googles things. I'm trying to be humble, guys. I really am. But stay safe, everyone. We will see you in the next video. And don't forget to check